question is, what is an external program? We're going to cover that. We're going to cover the different types of external programs that we have. We're going to talk about how you can register an external program and let configurator know, where this external program is and how it can invoke it. We are going to go through some demos of creating external programs, and if we have some time, I'm hoping we can do a little bit on debugging and how you can debug your external programs. Okay, so first, what is an external program? These are ways that you can add custom functionality to your configurator business logic. If you've had some experience, you know that, or if you've even played around in Design Studio, you know that there is a rule called an external program rule, and that's essentially the touch point that kicks off these external programs. And it's a way for you to, I guess, leverage the power of other tools such as your SQL Server or any knowledge that you may have about Visual Studio.net or even VB6, and use the power of those tools within the context of your configuration. We have several different types of external programs that we support. The most common are probably the first two, the COM external program or a stored procedure external program. We also support the scripting languages and iSeries procedures as well. There are some drawbacks with scripting language. They're not fit real well for the web, but they are there to use. They're not going to perform as well as we typically would like, but just because of the nature of scripting languages. But there is support there for those. We're not going to go over those today. We're not going to go over the iSeries procedures either, so we're going to concentrate on the COM and the stored procedures. But one thing that all of these external programs have in common, there's a few things that they have in common. Every external program has a name, and that's what we're going to use to reference it within our configuration. They all have return values. They all have a list of parameters. Now, you don't have to supply a list of parameters, but you can. And they all have, in some way or another, a form of error handling, which we may touch on just a bit. But the important thing is that all these external programs, they sort of share this common ground. So now that we've talked a little bit about what an external program is, we're going to talk about registering it. So I mentioned a bit ago just that as we create an external program, we need to tell the configurator how to execute it and how it can find that external program. So we're going to kind of start there. This is something that I debated in my mind. Should I do this at the beginning or at the end? But what I want to do at this point is try to give a framework or an idea of how these are going to fit into your configuration, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how to create it. So I'm going to switch over to my virtual here, and I've got Design Studio up and open, and hopefully this is familiar to most of you. As we create I've got a part open here, and as we create our rule sets, you may have seen, and as I mentioned before, you may have seen this particular rule type that I have selected here. This is an external program rule, and this is the point at which the rules will call out to our external program. And I've already got some of this set up, but you notice here that we have a program name, and that's really the only reference that this rule has to the external program itself. And so we want to talk about how do we reference that? How do we tell a configurator where that is? Well, the place we do that is under the Manage node and under External Connections. And if you click on Functions, you'll see that there are several here that are, some of these are intrinsic and come when you install configurator. But you can also add new ones by right-clicking on the node and clicking on Add. And then what we see here is some of the things that I mentioned before that's common within external programs. Number one is a name, so we have to give it a name that will be referenced by the rules. So this can be our customer hour EP hours EP. I mentioned that there's some error actions. I'm just gonna throw these out there. If you want more information about this, we can give you more. But the EPs can do different things when an error occurs within the external program. The implementation type, these are some of these are our different types of external programs that we support. And you'll see in here there's the COM external program as well as the scripting languages as well as the stored procedure. We're going to talk about COM and the scripting language or the stored procedure today. And there are a couple different interface versions. We're gonna talk about interface version 5. Hopefully you'll feel very comfortable with that by the time we're done with this presentation. And we enter a program ID. So if you've done any work with COM, you know that COM objects are created with a program ID. And I'm going to go ahead and type this in here now, knowing beforehand what we're going to call this. But I'll call this customer hours EP dot sample EP. Okay, and that may be, if you've done any COM programming, you know that that's a pretty familiar program ID for a sample for a COM object. And that's all we need to do to create to basically register this external program within the configurator. And then from my rules, if I go back to my rule set, and hopefully your screens are refreshing as fast as mine is, maybe a little pause there, but if we go back to the rules, I can create external program rules, drop them onto my rule set, and I can see that under my program name, I can see here's my customer hours EP program that I can call from this rule set. Now I'm going to point out at this point some of the other things that I'd mentioned before that are common. I mentioned that every external program has a name, they can handle errors. I also mentioned they have a return value, and this is where we specify the return value. So we return the value or the result of the external program to the variable of your choice. So if you want to put it into a global variable, you can select global here and type in the name of, result var or something like that. Or if it's a configuration variable, you can select that, and then you can select one of your configuration variables. And whatever the result of that external program is, it'll be placed into that variable. And then the last thing that's common among all these external programs is the list of parameters. So in the lower right, you'll see that we have a grid that's currently empty. But if you right click on it, you can add a parameter. So you can give it a key, we'll call key 1, and you can give it a value. Now the value can be a literal, like some string value, or a number, or even more commonly, you're probably going to pass it a variable of some type. So we'll say a secondary variable s-10. More likely you're going to do something like that, but you can pass literals as well. So that's essentially just how we register and use an external program. All right, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to jump back real quick into our slideshow. So once we've registered an external program, this is where the meat of the presentation really is going to come. We need to be able to create these external programs, and in order for this to work, the code that we write has to conform to a predefined interface. I'm not sure of the background of everybody as far as how much you're familiar with the term interface. I imagine many of you are probably intimately familiar with it, and some maybe sort of a new concept. But the idea is that we, as a ByDesign configurator, has defined sort of a set of calls that it's going to expect from all of its external programs. And that's what we're going to look at today is what is this interface? How do I make my external program fit into the configurator system? For COM programs, it is the interface called iExternalProgram. And for stored procedures, it's a specific signature of your stored procedure. And I'm going to show you that now. So we'll go right to this. We'll go right back into the demo, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so here are my rule set. Let me just give you an idea of what I'm going to do. I have created a couple of variables. I've created a height and a width variable, and you can see here that I'm displaying them on this screen. Then I'm going to run an external program. And then what I want that external program to do is I want it to concatenate the values of the height and width and return it into the description. So I'm going to get basically, if it's something that's 4 feet by 2 feet, I'm going to get like a 4x2 is kind of what I want to do with this external program.